This is March the 21st, and I'm with my favorite aunt, Aunt Mildred in Tulsa. And is it all right if I record our conversation?
Yes.
All right. You don't have to talk right in it, but you can just hold that, and
Yeah.
it should pick it up.
Well, anyway, when the war started, Frank came over and told my father, R.M. Hogan, that he says we're going to be killed. But he was thinking of the war, that he'd have to go to the war and he'd be killed. But before they called him up, why, he died from the flu. And so did thousands and thousands of other people, neighbors and friends and everything. And a lot of us had the flu. Everybody had it except my father. And he had to help take care of everybody else,
Well, let me stop this to make sure that we're...
You couldn't get anybody to do anything. And they had trouble just even burying the people, especially in the smaller towns and rural areas. And people were a little bit afraid, to go anywhere near anyone that had the flu so anyway, he didn't have to go, but Tom Holland, who was a brother-in-law to him, they married sisters, why he had to go. And he only lived a short time after he got back. He wasn't killed in the service, but he didn't live very long when he got home. And so now I have to, what do you want to know?
Well, I just, where did they live? Where was Florida born?
Florida was born in Stidham, Oklahoma, and that's over here, not too far from Shakota.
Okay.
I was born in Shakota. But Florida and Abby and Frank lived in Stidham at the time that Florida was born. And that was in 1912 that they lived in Stidham. Now, they called me from down there, Joy did, or Leonard or somebody, to ask me where Florida was born. I had to think for a minute or two, and then I remembered. They had thought that she was born in Council Hill because Evie and Frank had lived in Council Hill, which is just about like Findlay, about that size town. But anyway, I was born in 1911, and I was born at not too far from Shakota. And then when I was, about 3 years old, we moved down to Pushmataha, and your father, Frank and Evie, I don't know how come I'm down there. I don't know if the Millers went down there, Frank's name was Frank Miller, and they got acquainted with Mr. Randall. And he told them about how nice it was that the range was free, for cattle and everything, and this and that and the other, which was true. And they wanted to move down there, and so they came back and talked my father in the notion of going down there, and he did. And he met your father, and then that's how come us to move down there. And
now, were you only about 3?
Yes.
Do you remember any of that?
Well, in a way, it seems to me like that I remember, we had to move in wagons. There wasn't such a thing as a car in those days. And I remember, it seems like, or I've heard them tell it so much, that that we had 3 or 4 wagons that we were moving in, and we'd camp on the way. And
Took some cattle, too.
yeah, we took cattle and a lot of things. That's the only way you could get it. That's the only way you could move. And and I wasn't quite 3 years old, but I was getting close to 3 years old when we moved down there. So anyway, then Athene was the only one in our family that was born down there. All the rest of the children was born up around Shakota at different places, you know, wherever we lived. And of course, my father farmed, and
So that'd been around 1913 when you moved.
yeah, it was 1913 because that's when Athene was born, and we moved there in the fall, and she was born in December.
My goodness.
So and she was the baby of the family.
That was a kind of rough trip on your mom.
Yeah, it was, but you know, that's the only way people traveled in those days, and somehow, some way, they made it all right. I had to have a faint memory, seems like, that we had to cross rivers, and I think that kind of frightened
Oh, boy, yeah.
me, you know, to be in a wagon and see the water and see the cows swimming across and everything, you know, because we took everything with us. And so we got down there, and my father started farming, and he didn't even make back the seed that they planted. Never made a thing. But of course, he still had cattle and a few things like that. But after that, he did do real well, but it just happened to be one of those years somehow, some way, or maybe he didn't know how to farm down there in that part of the country, you know, because it was different.
Well, where did they live? Was that Grandma Hogan's house?
Yes. We lived in the same house all those years. It blew away. It blew away from a storm long after we were gone from it. But that was over there, you know, on what they called One Creek. I don't know why it's named One Creek. And your father and Abby, see, when Frank Miller died from the flu, so did Mr. Randall's wife died from the flu. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing. So he and Evie got married then, see, after a while after they had died. And I forgot now what I started to tell you.
Well, that place, I don't even know. I know the road to that house, but I couldn't go there.
That was a beautiful place where Mr. Randall lived. I remember the house as well as I could even mark off the rooms and things, because they lived there for a good many years before they moved to Snow. And I don't know why that's your father, why Mr. Randall decided that he wanted to go to Snow. Bill, that story, I don't know about that. Nothing about it. I just know that he did.
Well, did Aunt Nina get married to Bill Smith and move to Findlay, or did Grandma Hogan live there?
We didn't live in Findlay, no. We lived about, over there is about 3 miles,
Yeah.
I would think, from Findlay.
Yeah, north of Findlay, between Findlay
Yeah,
and Snow. I know where the road is.
Yeah, and we lived there all those years, and I went back over there, probably 8 or 9 years ago. Maybe it hadn't been that long. And but the house, you know, is different. They did build build a house there where our old house blew away. I remember all about that, and yes, all the kids got married there except Athene and me. Well, my mother still lived there when I got married, but when Athene got married, why, they had moved to Finley. See, Mother moved to Finley after my father died. And if he was living, he'd have never moved there.
That was Vidito, was it? Roxy's dad. Or no. Yeah,
Who was with
no, May. I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
May
is Roxy's dad.
May is Roxy's mother, and her father was Tom Hollins. He's the one that went to Germany or someplace during the war, and he only lived just a little while after he came back. He never was the same. He was injured somewhere or other during the service. I mean, during the wartime. And
now, where did May fit in? Was she older than Mom or younger?
She was younger. Your mother was the oldest girl. She's born in
98. About, yeah. I believe that's right.
I don't know why I'm coughing. You want to turn this off? When we were kids growing up, why, our parents never drank anything, never served a cocktail or anything, except at Christmas, we always had a bowl of eggnog, because my father was real Southern, and that's a Southern tradition if you're from the South.
And that's about the only time anyone ever drank since Christmas.
Of course, we kids didn't drink it, but you know, they'd make a big bowl of eggnog, and they'd drink a glass, but just a glass. And I never saw a drunk person. I was a great big kid before I ever saw a drunk person, and a drunk person, and I'll tell you about that. But at our home, we did have some liquor. Now, what kind it was, I don't know. It's probably a kind that bootleggers made. Moonshine. But anyway, my mother kept that. And if we ever got real bad cold or got where we couldn't hardly breathe, why, she would fix some of that liquor.
Toddy.
Yeah, a hot toddy, and bring it. And it wasn't anything I hated more than that. I just nearly died when I knew I was going to have to drink it. Until this day, I do not like it. And I don't want any kind of liquor. But I will drink wine. And so anyway, we always had eggnog at Christmas time, and I never will forget that one year, why, we made this big thing of eggnog, and the son-in-laws was there, like Omer McCullough, and Bill Randell, and I guess Bill Smith, and I don't know who else. It wasn't unusual to have at least 50 people at Christmas time for dinner. Can you imagine? And since they didn't have catering in those days.
Yeah, goodness.
I don't know how they did it. And anyway, I heard them. And I was just a little kid, but I heard them say, "Let's make Mr. Hogan drunk." And they got a great big goblet of that eggnog. And here, Mr. Hogan, drink this eggnog. It'll be good for you. my father took it and drank it. Set the glass down, and they said, "Oh, here!" They grabbed his glass. "We're going to give you another one." He said, "No, I don't want another one. One's all I want." And "Oh, no, you got to have another one. We still got to have a lot of this eggnog. You just got to have it." He said, "I told you that was all I wanted." And I mean, that closed that subject. He would not take only just the one glass.
Yeah, he knew.
Well,
Had enough.
Yeah, right. But they thought they was going to have some fun. But anyway,
What'd they do, finish it up for him?
I guess. But I never will forget that, because I was listening to that. And see, back then, children were usually seen and not heard.
Yeah.
And I kept quiet. I didn't say anything, but I was so happy. I knew somewhere or other that it wasn't right because of them talking about making him drunk. And I'd never seen a drunk person. I didn't know what that was, hardly. And then another time, of course, you know, when you live in the country and only people you see is somebody that comes by in a wagon or a buggy or a horseback. And we were out playing one day, and my mother told us to all get in the house real quick and not to say a word and close the doors, and she did too. And we said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "Well, there's a drunk man coming," and it was Laz Randall, and he'd get dog drunk, but I don't know why we were scared of him or why she wanted us to be scared of him. But anyway, we got in the house and was real quiet, and all he did was just go down the road kind of singing. And but he was kind of, you know, wobbling on the horse, what little bit we got to see. But I've often laughed about that and think that we all had to get in and hide. I imagine that my mother maybe had seen drunk people, and she just didn't want to talk to him, and she thought if we all pretended to be gone, well, he'd go on by. Well, he did. He never even stopped or anything at our house. But I often think about those things, and what was the reason behind them, you know.
Well, Randy has told me some real interesting stories about Laz.
Oh, listen, he was quite a character, a good-looking guy, though.
He said he could ride any kind of horse.
That's right.
He said that there ever was a horse that could throw him, and that he was extremely strong.
Right, he was.
And a good shot, and my dad was supposed to have been a good shot.
Yeah.
Randy said when, I remember telling when a carnival would come to town, Antlers,
yeah,
that they'd go and they'd always have a booth where they'd challenge anyone to outshoot them.
Yeah.
And they always had one tent where they had a strong man that would either wrestle or box and whip anyone, take anyone off.
Right,
and said Laz could generally whip them.
Oh, he was interesting. Now, you see, I was just a tiny little kid the last time I ever saw him. I mean, probably not over 10 years old anyway. And but I remember to this day how good looking he was, and what pretty hair he had, and it was kind of just a little curly, not real curly, but just a little. And but he was a good looking and built up, you know, strong and healthy looking and everything. And I expect he could just about whip anybody.
And said Dad could outshoot him. Said they'd shoot one round with him,
right,
and he'd get the prize, and they wouldn't shoot with him anymore.
Right.
Randy has one picture, and it's the only picture I've ever seen of Laz.
Well, I was thinking here. I just wondered. I don't remember ever seeing a picture of Laz, but he was quite an interesting. Now Howard, he was supposed to have married and had a child. I wonder where that kid is.
I have no idea. I'll ask Randy. Maybe he can.
But to best of my memory, Laz maybe married and had a child. Seems like I could have him mixed up though with somebody else, so I don't know.
Well, I've always heard that there's some Randalls at Soper, but I never
Well,
did know
see,
any of them.
that's where Laz lived.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
He lived at Soper. Well,
I mean, he'd go, I say lived. It wasn't so much that he lived there, but he was there a lot, went to Soper a lot, down around, all around Soper.
yeah, Muddy Boggy. And
Yeah, all those places down towards Durant, you know. So the thing of it is, people live such a different life. You know, if you write a book about how people lived then and what they had to do, the younger generation wouldn't believe it.
no.
They'd think that wasn't true.
Did your folks have an automobile when they?
Not until, you know, years and years later. Mr. Randall had the first automobile anywhere in that country. And the thing of it was, you didn't have people teach you to drive back then. They just turned the car on, and if you went in and bought it, there wasn't any law, you know, about how you drove. And for years, for several years.
No license or anything?
No license or anything like that. Even after they moved to Snow, and he'd get in that car and go to town, and people'd see him coming. And, you know, there's such few cars, you knew who belonged, who owned the car. And they'd get off the side of the road and wait till he passed. Now, he went out on the road just licking his split.
Yeah.
Hardly looking any place. Now, you wonder how they, well, this day and time, they wouldn't have lived to get across town.
And the roads were cattle trails, I imagine. Didn't have
Oh,
much
yeah,
roads.
there was no, really, it was just a road, a wagon road, when they first moved to Snow. And they built the highway later, you know. And, but he drove all of his life, but I'm sure that with experience he got where he could drive better. I don't know. I know I went with him one time to, not a carnival, but what am I trying to say, that comes through the country once in a while.
Revival or?
No, it was a show like
Circus.
Circus.
Circus,
Florida and I don't know who else, and I went with Mr. Randall to Durant. And I was about 15 or 16 years old then, and somehow or other he decided he'd take us down there. Well, we went with him in our truck, and we went to Durant and got down there just about daylight and eat breakfast, and then went to the circus. And that was my very first circus. And it was pretty good. They had, you know, it was Ringling Brothers, and they were the best then. And it was real interesting. And it seemed like someone else went with us, but I can't remember who it was. But anyway, times was certainly different.
Were your folks, did you go to church and Sunday school?
Yeah, but we didn't have a regular church. They had church in the schoolhouse, you know.
Probably at Finley?
No, no, over there in the country.
Okay.
And we didn't have it every Sunday. You know, the ministers usually just went around to several places, and we didn't have a regular minister. And it's always the Baptist church. We never did have, very few times in my life, until later years, that I was ever in any other kind of church besides the Baptist church.
Well, wonder, how old was Florida when Mom married Dad? She wasn't very old, was
No, she was 5 years old.
5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I bet those Randall boys made life kind of rough on her.
Well, none of them was at home except Bud and Hattie.
But,
The older one, see, was already gone.
I remember Bud. I was around him.
Bill
a little,
was
but Hattie,
in-
I was only around her once or twice that I can remember.
Yeah, well, she was a good kid, and she was just a little older than me, not very much. And then Bud was just as ornery as he could be, but you know, if he'd have had education, there isn't any telling what he could have done.
He was music. He could play any musical instrument.
Anything in the world, if he just heard it, and he could fix anything in the world. One time, Evie and Mr. Randall went to Atlas, you know, and that was back when you had to go in a wagon or buggy, and left him home. Well, he built some kind of a something, kind of like a bomb, and set it off, you know, and it blew. Wonder it hadn't have blown him up. But he was always making something. I mean, just out of a tin can or anything. He was really and truly, if he'd have had any training, there isn't any telling what he could have done. And as far as music, he'd have been on TV or no telling what.
Yeah, Randy said he had a good voice and could play anything.
He could just about do anything, but he was just as ornery as they come now.
I met Ed. I can remember Ed being around him one time, and that's it.
Well, he and his wife, I may have Laz mixed up with Ed. I know Ed and his wife had a baby. Ed has been to our house and spent the night, he and his wife, after he was married, you know. And I remember him. Now, he was milder, much milder than Laz was, or Bud, either one.
Bill was real quiet. He
Yeah,
was
and Bill was
typical Indian.
entirely different from any of them. He never had anything to say, hardly. You know, he didn't talk unless you asked him something, and pretty well take care of his own business and leave everybody alone. That was Bill's idea. Miss Randall was a little old woman, not very big. I vaguely remember her because I was about 6 or 7 years old, I guess, when she died. No, I was just a year older in Florida, so I couldn't have been over 6. But I remember her. You know, we lived neighbors and see them real often and everything. And she was part Indian and real wonderful cook, and was little and kind of quiet, real quiet.
I figured maybe she was full-blood Indian. I didn't
Well,
know.
maybe
Probably,
she
was.
was.
She Choctaw, probably down there.
Because she had a lot of land and stuff like that. She could have been a full blood, but she
Well,
didn't.
Florida just a year ago took me over to show me the old Randall house for the cemetery, not too far, just about a mile west of where she lives.
Is that in Atlas?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But,
White house.
but the house that I know so well is the one that they live in the country.
Yeah,
see.
north of
And that Mr. Randall never lived in Atlas anymore after his wife died. He moved back out there in the country. They had moved to Atlas, and I don't know the story about that or anything. I don't know why they had moved to Atlas.
Do you know why she died? But
She died from the flu, just like everybody else.
Got everyone, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did. And of course, maybe a lot of them died from other things, but you know, how they knew such a little bit about the flu, they'd probably say the flu.
Well,
We
no
had-
penicillin or sulfa drugs or none
No,
of the
there
modern
wasn't
medicine.
such a thing as sulfa drugs. And they just have to treat them with aspirin and a few things, you know, like they had then, that they treated people for everything. I'm sure that people have died from cancer and from different diseases that the doctors didn't know what it was, and it never figured it out, and they just